Hi everybody, as you know well by now, in JavaScript you have a bunch of types for dealing with the variety of values you'll be running into as you're writing your code. And today we're going to be focusing on a special data type, and that is known as strings, the type that is responsible for all the text that you end up either reading or outputting and other things you might do in between. So let's get started. So chances are, if you've gotten this far in JavaScript, you've been working with text and strings this entire time. Maybe you just didn't realize it. So the way you use a string is pretty simple. You take whatever value, oftentimes text, and just wrap it in quotation marks or single quotation marks. Here's an example. I have a variable called text, and I'm defining a value. This is some text, and I'm wrapping it in quotation marks to indicate that it is going to be a string. And you can also indicate strings using single quotation marks. Now to JavaScript, it doesn't really care how you represent your strings. You can use double quotation marks or you can use single quotation marks. So feel free to use whatever one you're comfortable with. Once you've chosen one, try to be consistent. It's kind of weird to have your code have multiple variations of how strings are displayed. So be aware of that. And the way you use strings, you use them in basically what's known as a literal format, where you don't have to explicitly define them in any particular way. Just having the quotation marks is all you need. And you don't even have to have a variable that is declared in order to store them. Like take a look at this alert statement right here. I have alert. I'm just passing in the text that I want to display without placing it in a more formal container like a variable or an object, as you will see in a little bit. So with just this particular slide, you've learned all that you really need to know to be pretty effective and dangerous when it comes to working with strings, because really strings aren't extremely complicated. Just make sure to wrap them in a quotation mark to differentiate them from other forms of data like numbers and booleans and things like that. And once you've done that, you're pretty much good to go. So what we're going to do in the next remainder of this video and in some of the next slides is look at some of the functionality that JavaScript itself provides for making it easier for you to work with strings. If you just want to represent strings natively and not do anything beyond it, you can just stop right here and watch something on TV like Family Guy. But if you want to learn more about what JavaScript provides, the following slides will kind of give you more information on this. So what we're going to look at are the string properties and methods, the built-in functionality that JavaScript provides for doing all sorts of string manipulations and operations that you might find handy. So just to give you a sneak peek at what we're going to be looking at, the things we will cover are these following properties and methods. Now I'm not going to go into detail about every single one of them right now because we will look at them in greater detail in a few moments. But some of these properties help you to manipulate what your string looks like. Some of them end up allowing you to take a subset of the string and do other things with it. They're all just sort of done based on common operations you might perform when you encounter text as part of your code. All right, so now I'm going to just give you fair warning that we are going to be looking at what all those properties mean and how they work. And that is not the most exciting thing ever, especially because the subject material here is a string. It's literally just text inside your code. And that is not particularly visual, it is not exciting, it is not too surprising either. It's pretty boring, which in the world of code is actually not a bad thing. Boring and predictable is good. But I'm just going to just still tell you that this is going to be far less exciting than it might seem. So just be prepared for that. Take a big, deep breath of air, and then let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is look at one of the most popular operations we'll do with a string, and that is combining them. So you have a string, in this case, string A, and it says I'm a simple string. I have another variable called string B where I'm defining another string value, and this one says I'm a simple string too. And what I'm going to do is combine these two strings. So the easiest way of doing that is by using the plus operator. So take a look at the alert statement below. I have string A plus, and in this case, I'm also including a string literal that is just placed in there for the space character, because if I didn't do this, my combined string would literally be I'm a simple string, period, with no space, and the next string will begin, which looks kind of odd. So I'm also concatenating the plus of my string A with the space character, and then concatenating that with string B. Oh, and the word I'm using, concatenating, that's a fancy word that you'll see used in various programming textbooks and material that basically means combining things. So concatenating strings means I'm combining strings together. So keep that under your hat for a really, really long word in some word game that you might be playing. All right, so the thing is also, and this is going to be pretty important to focus on a little bit, is that you can actually mix and match the literal and object form of strings. I know this kind of seems like I threw it in there out of the blue, but there's some method to my madness here. So I have text A and it just says please. And in text B, I'm declaring a string, And the string that I'm declaring is actually in the form of an object. I'm using a new string constructor and passing in the word stop into it. And then when I'm combining these values again, notice that I am combining text A plus some strings that I'm putting in there, which is make it, and then another plus character with text B, which indicates the string object. Now the thing is, it doesn't matter what form your strings are in. In this case, it's a variable storing a literal, a variable storing an object, and a literal directly. And in the end, when you combine them all together, they all are displayed as normal text, and more specifically as a string primitive without the object thing around it. So keep that in mind. And the next wrinkle to note about this is that, if you look at all of these examples, right, you have the plus character, space, quotation mark, and these things can get a little bit, error prone, especially if you're trying to combine a lot of strings together in some way. And to help with that, you have a concat method. So what the concat method does is, in this case, I have 3 variables, foo, blah, and bark, and each of them have some text in it. In the concat variable, I basically specify the strings I want to combine using commas as a way of separating them. So in this case, I just have foo that I'm calling the concat method on the beginning of my string, in which case I'm going to have it be the foo property, the foo variable. And in this case, I'm doing foo.concat, and I'm just specifying all the strings I want to combine by using a comma. And this is a way of essentially avoiding having to deal with making sure there's a space in the right location or a plus character in the right location. And this is a way where if you don't like the plus operator, hey, you can use this approach and still be somewhat okay. But to be fair though, I very rarely ever use the concat method, because once you get a hang of using the plus character and making sure to keep track of the open and close quotation marks, you're in good shape. So, if you want to use plus, by all means use it. And if you want to use concat, you can use it as well. And the end result is you're going to have a string object that is a combination of all the things you threw into it. Okay. So now we're going to go back to something I talked about earlier. Notice in the previous slide, I'm having foo.concat. I'm calling the concat method on the property, on the variable foo. But notice what foo is. Earlier we said that only objects in JavaScript can contain properties and methods and all the good stuff that JavaScript really has going for it. Something of primitive value like just a string like, in this case, I really, that doesn't really look like an object, right? It's literally just it's a primitive. How in the world are we able to reconcile being able to call a method on a string literal like I've shown here? And the thing is, it's something that JavaScript does that's actually pretty cool. So in order to be able to access properties on a string literal, what JavaScript does is for a very small moment, like a microsecond, it takes your literal and it converts it into an object, converts it into a string object in the case of text, and that gives that property all the various value methods that are available only in a real string object. So for a brief moment, your lowly string literal is turned into an object where something like the concat method is able to live and do its thing, and then it returns its right value, then it goes back to being a string literal again. So this is temporary promotion going on where literals become objects for a while and then we go back to being literals. And that's what we're able to reconcile, going from having a literal that is able to access the properties and methods of a string object. And this is not just string specific. As we'll find out later, almost all the various types that we have, like the more primitive types like number and boolean, they work in a very similar way where the literal version of it, or the primitive version of it, is actually able to access the properties that the bigger object of itself contains. So, and one more piece of trivia before we move on. A lot of the things we're going to see next are going to involve manipulating what a string does. And the most common manipulations involve knowing where a particular character is and doing something with it. And the way you do that is by mapping each character in your text to a number known as the index position. And this actually is much more straightforward than what I'm making it out to be. So in this case, I have a variable called vowels, and I'm storing a string called A-E-I-O-U, the vowels in the English language. And if I had to map those numbers, the first letter gets a number of 0, the second letter gets a number of 1, the third letter gets a number of 2, and so on. The index position always starts at 0 and goes until the particular length of the full length of the string you're dealing with. And the important part again to remember is that in some languages like Visual Basic, the first of anything starts with a number 1. In JavaScript, you actually start with 0. So the letter at index position 0 would be A. And likewise, the character at index position 3 would be O. And you'll see this, this is the first time you're seeing this. It's going to be a little bizarre at first, but over a period of time, you're going to realize that a string is nothing more than a series of characters, each of which can be individually accessed by using their index position number. So related to that, if you want to access a string character, you have several ways to do this. You can use the bracket notation or the char at method to access these individual characters. So in this case, one approach is by using vowels and specifying in brackets, square brackets, the exact number of the letter you want to target. In this case, the vowels, we're accessing the second number, which is 0, 1, 2, which would be the I. So remember again, index notation starts with 0 in JavaScript. And if you don't want to use the bracket syntax, maybe you don't like them, you can totally use the char at method, which functions in a very similar way. You just specify in this case, you call the char at method on the text, and then you specify the number 2 or whatever number of the index position you're interested in to get the character get returned. So pretty straightforward. Now, here's what's really cool about being able to do something like this. Each of your strings, if you can access each individual character, you can also, one of the things you need to know is how long your string is, and that you can find out by using the length property. So in this case, I'm having the same variable called vowels and the same value, and what I'm doing here is I'm actually looping through each character and printing that character out to the screen. And the way I'm doing that is using a for loop, and then starting with an index position of 0, and then iterating through the loop until I reach the end of the string. And the end of it, I'm able to determine by using the length property. So as long as the value that I'm currently at is less than the end of the string, I'm just going to keep moving right and keep printing each character as it appears. So in this case, alert vowels I will run, about 5 times, once for each character in our text. So that's something cool you can do, and something you'll see many future examples and more practical examples take advantage of when you're dealing with strings and their characters. Okay, so now we're going to shift over a little bit into something that is more into manipulating the string value itself. So the first thing we're going to do is look at how to create substrings. So that's basically where you have a big string and you want to trim it down to just a part you are interested in. And the two methods that JavaScript provides for you to be able to do that are the slice and substr, substring, or substr methods. So here's an example. I have a big string, and that's a variable, and the value is Pulp Fiction is an awesome movie. Indeed it is. And so what I can do though is I can slice it and I can use either the slice method or the substring method to get only the parts of the text that I'm interested in. The way the slice method works is pretty simple. You provide 2 values. The first value is the index position of the starting point, and the second value is the end position of the starting point. So what this means is, in this case, the big string dot slice, and I'm passing the value 0 and 12. The 0 maps to the starting position that I want to go, and an index position 0 means it's the first character, so it's the letter P. And then the number 12 is the index position of the 12th character in this particular example, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 space, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it is the N, it is the word Pulp Fiction. And if you were to look at the alert for this last example, you'll see Pulp Fiction getting displayed. So pretty straightforward. And the next thing is substring. I keep calling it substring, but it's substr, so just imagine I'm not saying the ing part of it. So the way the substr method works is very similar to slice, but instead of specifying both the starting position and the ending position of the string you want to extract, essentially, what you do is you specify the starting position. In this case, it's still going to be 0, which is going to be the P. But what you specify as second argument is not the ending position, but the number of characters to go from where your starting position is. So in this case, I'm starting at a position 0, and I'm going forward by 4 characters. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is where the word pulp is, and that's what gets essentially created. So all you're really creating with the substring and substr and the slice methods is a starting and ending point with which to use these virtual scissors, which you can use to cut the text that you are interested in. Now, there are a lot more arguments you can specify, or not a lot more arguments, but different types of arguments. You can specify negative values for both the starting position, ending position, and the length of the characters you're interested in getting. And you can read online about what they do, but that's not particularly interesting, and that gets more into the more nitty-gritty details that you'll probably never end up using in real life. And I'd rather focus on things that you'll probably use, and then you can go to Google or Stack Overflow for those rare moments when you run into something that isn't satisfied by the 95% case of what we're going to be looking at. Okay, so we looked at taking a substring and doing things with that. Now the opposite of that is actually splitting strings up. So instead of having one string and then being able to do things to that one particular item, you can actually take your string and make it into many strings. And the way this works, you have several ways of doing this, but the easiest way is by using the split method. And what the split method does is it takes an argument, it takes the character you're going to be using as a pattern with which you can use to split your strings by. In this case, I have a variable called days, and I have one gigantic string storing every day of the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the one common thing each of these items have is a comma. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to split all of these items by using the comma as the little signal I'm going to use to determine where to make my cut mark. So once I do this, what gets returned is an array, or another data structure that contains a collection of items inside it. In this case, the items are each individual strings that are each a string for Monday, a string for Tuesday, and a string for every other day of the week. And so what that means is you can, if you've never worked with arrays before, it's going to sound a little bit confusing. And if you've worked with arrays before, it's going to be right at home. All you can do with that is you can do all sorts of array-like things to it. You can iterate through using for each, or you can use a for loop, or you can also just access an individual item using the bracket, the array in notation. In this case, I'm just accessing the 6th item from our list of days, which is returned, in which case it would be Sunday, because they have 7 days, and then because we're starting with 0, our index position starts at 0, so the 6th item would be the 7th item, which is Sunday. So pretty straightforward. Now, the next set of operations we'll be doing, and this is something you'll spend a lot of time doing as well, is finding something inside of a string. And this is a fun one because there are many ways of doing this, but the most popular way is by using the index of method. And I will cover some of the less popular ways in a few moments also, just to give you an idea of the full range of functionality you have for finding something inside a piece of text. So here I have a question. I wonder what the pigs did to make these birds so angry. And it's clearly a reference to Angry Birds. And what I'm going to do here is I want to find out where the word pigs makes an appearance. And the way I'm going to do that is by using the index of method, which allows you to specify the character or characters that make up the starting point for what you're trying to find. So in this case, I'm having, using the question property and using the question variable and calling the index of on it and passing the full word pigs. I could just start with pi or pig, which for this particular string would not create any false matches. So, and what gets returned ultimately is the number 18, which means that the starting point of the pig's content I'm trying to search for is the 18th character in this particular, particular piece of text. So pretty straightforward. Now, the thing is, this index of starts at the left and goes all the way right, or starts at the beginning of the string and goes all the way to the end. And if you want to go the opposite direction, instead of starting from the beginning going to the end, you want to start at the end and go all the way to the beginning, you had a last index of method instead, which works in this case in a very similar way because there's only one instance of pig, so replacing index of with last index of would not really do much. But you can imagine an example where I have a word that gets repeated many times over. Last index of would give you a different result than index of because the direction you're going in for searching is going to be different. Now, for a very advanced way of searching something inside your text, you also have the ability to specify regular expressions, or regex as the cool kids say it. And the way you use that is by using the match method. So just like before, I have a variable called phrase, and this time the value is there are 3 little pigs. And I'm also specifying just the regular expression, it just directly as a variable called regexp. And I'm doing this because just to help increase readability. And to figure out what the numbers are in this particular example, I'm going to use this phrase and call match on the phrase variable. And this particular regular expression is going to be the argument I pass into it. And what gets returned is the number 3. Now, covering regular expressions goes a little bit beyond what this particular video is about, but what this particular combination of characters and brackets does is simple. It says find any number that matches 0 through 9. So if you find a number between 0 through 9, match it. That is your string that you're going to look at. That's the comma in the split example we saw earlier, for example. So find this number, return 3. So in this case, only one value gets returned because there's only one item. and that allows you to say number 0 returns a value of 3. So pretty straightforward and great for many advanced scenarios, because in the index of and last index of cases, I had to know exactly what I'm searching for. So if my input did not contain pigs, I would always return a value of -1, which is the value that get returned if a match is never found. But with regex, we have a little bit more flexibility in having a more general input. It doesn't matter what number is being shown here or how long my text is or anything like that. As long as the number matches what my regular expression condition is searching for, something between 0 and 9, this entire expression is valid and we will find something in the end. So that's something to keep in mind as part of searching for items, whether you want something generic or whether you want something very specific. That will greatly influence whether you use index of, last index of, or match. All right, so we're getting closer to the end. I know this is a long video, but like I said, I warned you, this is not the most exciting thing we've ever done. And so in this case, I have a phrase. The text is "My name is Bond, James Bond," and then JavaScript provides you with two methods, two uppercase and two lowercase, for automatically making your text all caps or automatically making your text all lowercase. So in this case, I have a phrase that to uppercase, which prints the uppercase version of what we originally came in with. And then you have the to lowercase method, which prints the lowercase version of what we came in with. So nothing too fancy going on here. It's pretty straightforward. And the very last method we're going to be looking at is the trim method. And what it allows you to do is remove white space that is either the beginning or the end of your string. Now you may be wondering, why would I care? Why would I, how in the world am I going to a situation where I have white space somewhere in my text at the beginning or the end? The thing is, with JavaScript, you often spend time reading input that other people have provided. You might have a situation where you have a form element that is taking in name, address, the usual stuff you provide in form elements. And if users accidentally provide a space at the end or a space at the beginning, that can kind of wreak havoc with whatever data structure you're using to ultimately store that data or process that data. And the trim method is actually very great for being able to take all of that, random spaces caused by tabs, the white space, the spacebar key, and any other approach that users may use, and remove all of that, just give you a clean string that starts and ends with a non-space related character. Wow. All right. So yeah, this took a little longer than I expected. We covered, we started off pretty hot with covering the basics and looking at some of the cool things you did, like combining strings or learning how strings and objects and how they're related. And as expected, we progressively went from really high frequency scenarios to things you'll probably use once in a blue moon, if ever. So keep that in mind. And with that, to learn more, go to Croup.com, where there's a whole lot of more topics besides just strings. I'm pretty sure at this point the last thing I want to learn more about is strings and text. So you can go there, learn about animation or other JavaScript topics, so go check it out. If you have any questions about this or any other problem you're running into with your JavaScript, go and post in the forums at forum@Croup.com, where I and others are more than happy to help you out. And you can ping me directly by tweeting to Krupa, finding me on Facebook, or just commenting on YouTube. I'm pretty prompt about getting back to you, so by all means, go for it. And of course, if you like watching things and learning by watching videos, you might also like reading some of the books I've written on various topics that are related to web development, and especially the topic of strings, which is covered extensively in several books I've written on JavaScript already. So if you want to read them in Kindle or paperback editions, go and click here to be taken to Amazon, where you can do all of your shopping magic. All right, so we're reaching the end of this particular video. So if you like this, be sure to tell your friends and enemies. Just tell them to watch the first 4 or 5 minutes of it, and warn them that the rest of it's going to be pretty boring. And if you want to be notified of all the video related developments on the channel, go and hit subscribe to be notified of those things. And every time you subscribe, my subscriber number goes up, and that just makes the world a more awesome place, and that's a good thing. And if you want to be notified of cool things that are going on the web, or things that I've created, or things that I found that you might find interesting, go and follow me on Twitter and Facebook for these little micro updates. And lastly, buy a book. Buying a book not only helps you learn something in a different format than reading it on a screen, it also helps satisfy my various addictions and hobbies. So for example, if you look behind me, there's probably a giant bear sitting on a sofa, and it's probably glaring at me right now. And each time you buy a book, you help ensure I'll end up feeding him extra to make sure that he is extra happy, which means that I still live to make more videos for you. So yeah, there you have it. Buy more books, helps feed the bear, helps keep me alive. Alright guys, see you next time.